2, 1. Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, we need to ask a very important question of how we even got here in the first place for Brawn to be deprioritized and for Brain to actually reign superior. And we think this is largely because of the perverse incentive structures that are created, perpetuated, and forwarded intergenerationally by a broken capitalist system that has skewed the reward system to be able to prioritize those top managers and white collars at the top at the expense of all of the people in the middle and the bottom who are actually the beasts of burden, who are actually doing more of the work. And I think to some extent, opening opposition understands this because they try and talk about idea versus execution. And I think that in and of itself is a problematic comparison because an idea is an idea. As they say, talk is cheap, and all of these better, richer, smarter people who have the means, motivation, and capacity, and in many instances were lucky because of the birth lottery or they were Nepo babies, received an education system which is also, by the way, skewed in favor of Brawn at the expense of those particular people. A few strategic observations of top half clash. The first is, opening government has the right motivation and points out the problem of the wage gap and accessibility, but they don't really say why it's largely because of the capitalist system. And I think we need to be able to examine those perverse incentives and explain why on the comparative things are particularly better. I am going to examine a principle and practicality in terms of the valuation of labor and how exactly that becomes worse on side opposition. Take note that opening government didn't have much nuance to the comparison of worlds and why the comparative is better. I believe opening opposition points that out and agrees with me. The motion isn't this House supports the equality of Brain and Brawn. It's about a world reset and a comparison versus status quo. The second thing I have to say is that opening opposition proves the harm when they talk about values and ideas over execution. But in status quo, these particular people, like I mentioned in my point of information, do not have an equal footing. I agree with DLO that equity is something that we need to be able to examine, but the fact that the perception or starting point is already disproportionate skews those particular people out of things that they can't control, whether it be the birth lottery and nature or the nurture of their environment and circumstances, dictate what kinds of jobs these people are going to be able to unlock and the valuation of labor that society has in terms of looking at them and rewarding them through their salary and other opportunity. The third is that on-side opposition, even if you say like you're willing to have like less workers, is exactly where the capitalist system is likely to be harsher on those particular workers for reasons such as a lot of blue-collar laborers being contractual and hired by people who are from multinational corporations. You know, people who wear suits, people who went to Ivy League, people who actually got a degree, as opposed to like the lower barrier of being able to enter those particular blue-collar jobs wherein you just need a technical or vocational short course to be able to be like a plumber or an electrician. The harm here is that those particular people become wrecked by the capitalist system when they at best earn minimum wage, and even if there are incentive structures to be able to climb up, it nowhere pales in comparison to what these other particular people in Silicon Valley or in other parts of the world are able to get because these people went to school or were able to like get a business or consulting job in like McKinsey, Procter & Gamble, Nestle, etc. These particular people continue to be overworked as beasts of burden at the expense of the capitalist system that rewards those particular people at the top disproportionately more than the particular people who are employing them. But before I proceed, go for it, opening opposition.
Yeah,
Yeah, go for it, Mo.
So, capitalism does not stop existing in your world. It just shifts its metric. It just overworks the construction workers now in your world because capitalism still exists either ways because of the incentives of capitalism to exist.
I completely agree, but at least that shift is able to unlock that equity impact that you guys are motivated by. Because those rich people who are working in fucking consulting or in Silicon Valley are probably able to take that 20-30% pay cut, and when you redistribute that towards other kinds of people, those people who are living on a day-to-day existence on minimum wage, the quality of life for those particular people, who by the way are like the 90, 95, 99% of people who aren't the fucking 1% on Wall Street, are those particular people whose lives on average become better. But what's the mech, right? The mechanism is that on the comparative, when the starting point is perceiving these things as equal, it's exactly the point in which you're able to value labor in a different way. The impacts that we're going to prove are threefold. One, why does status quo value labor in this particular way, which is something that I answered in my pre-oration in terms of brain over brawn. Number two, what is the comparison of worlds looking like, which answers something that open government didn't do. And thirdly, how are we able to set up for success particular people who are struggling and the very people who need these kinds of things. If I ask a question, or if you ask an average person, hey gang, would you rather be a blue-collar manual laborer who took a vocational course and a degree? Or would you rather be like a white-collar supervisor, boss, or manager who employs these people? Most people are going to be answering the latter. That in and of itself is fundamentally unfair and anti-poor because there are things outside their locus of control, like that of the birth lottery and other circumstances that dictate these particular things. The impact here is that we want to be able to push people to be a better version of themselves, wherein we understand both brawn and brain are important, but the application is situational. There are times where brawn alone won't cut it and you need some brain. There are times where being a nerd and brain alone won't cut it. If we take a look at the metrics we have, the metrics for brain do exist, like the grades you can get, whether you have honors or not, but the only extent of brawn only matters in the gym. That in and of itself is problematic, and we on our side of the house are motivated to fix that and put a check on the capitalist system. Very proud to stand on side proposition.
Thank you.